Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please, we want you to make yourself comfortable and find a space for you, because any moment from now, the academic procession will file in. May we now rise, please, for the academic procession.
the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, the Registrar, the University Librarian, Provost of the College of Medicine, Deans. It is my pleasure to invite Professor Akinyinka Omigbodun to present the university lecture, Part 2, titled From Cells to System Building, a Vibrant Academy, with the sub-topic, the system nourishing the cell. Professor Akinyinka Omigbodun.
I want to give thanks to God Almighty for the success of the first part of this lecture and for enabling us to gather today for the second part. I'm very grateful to those who were here physically last week and are here again today. Mr. Vice Chancellor, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation, and Strategic Partnerships, the Registrar, the Bursar, the University Librarian, the Provost of the College of Medicine, the Provost of the Postgraduate College, Dean of the Faculty of Clinical Sciences, Deans of other faculties and of students, Directors of institutes and centers, heads of department, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. Last week, we looked at a cell engaging the system. This week, we will be looking at the system nourishing the cell. Any system that will flourish must nourish its constituent parts. In the previous part of our discourse, we touched upon an example of how one cell was nourished to flourish in a system that was favorable, and how that cell contributed towards nourishing other cells through various mechanisms. Some of the influence was direct, but there were other multiplier effects where the cell influenced other cells that never came into direct contact with him. In human body systems, cells can exert effects on cells very close to them, often referred to as paracrine activity. Sometimes the cells secrete something characteristic of them to exert what we call an exocrine effect nearby. Cells can also exert effects on other cells that are far away from their location, often relying on blood vessels to exert such effects, which we refer to as endocrine activity. The most influential cells whose effects endure most in any system are able to exert both paracrine/exocrine as well as endocrine activity. They are active locally and are effective globally. As we move to this next section, we will take a closer look at how systems can be geared to nourish all cells within it and get them to engage in both paracrine/exocrine as well as endocrine actions, so that the system can function better in a sustainable way. The two major parts of functioning systems are the infrastructure, some of which may not be visible, and the superstructure that is integrated with it to produce functionality. Without a solid infrastructure, any superstructure constructed thereon is bound to be defective and could ultimately collapse because of the meager support provided for it. I'm now going to touch on essential infrastructure for higher education. What constitutes essential infrastructure for tertiary level training, especially university education, is generally agreed upon. I've chosen to classify them into the following domains: physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, pedagogical infrastructure, and intellectual property infrastructure. Some would classify certain activities, such as creating a psychologically supportive environment and creating opportunities for networking as part of infrastructure. But I believe those are issues that are beyond infrastructure, and we shall come to them presently. The physical infrastructure includes the buildings where academic activities are to be held, such as auditoria, tutorial rooms, laboratories, libraries, academic and administrative offices, common rooms, cafeteria, health centers, and so on, as well as the surrounding parking and green spaces. An aesthetically appealing environment greatly facilitates brain health, time perception, and learning, thus providing the platform for a wholesome university experience for learners. All buildings should have designs that encourage inclusiveness, such as special access for people with special needs and restrooms that cater to such people. Sadly, many of the buildings put up in our university before this millennium were not sufficiently inclusive in their design. Some of them have now been modified to cater to those with special needs, but there are still many public spaces in the institution that are not readily accessible to such people, nor do restrooms adequately accommodate them. We need to deal with that situation. A reliable power supply stream and uninterrupted pipe-borne water supply are services that are essential in any institution. And where such municipal services are unreliable, the institution has to take measures to ensure that these amenities are available to support learning activities. I will move on to digital infrastructure. We are in the information epoch, the digital age. No modern institution of whatever kind can flourish in this era without appropriate digital infrastructure. Whether it's seeking prospective students or conducting admissions, registrations, instruction, assessment, graduation, issuing of transcripts, or tracking alumni, all are dependent on an effective cyber network and safeguarded data storage that will facilitate these functions. When our son matriculated here about 2 decades ago, his frustration with the process of admission and registration was palpable. He had to carry different forms around the campus to obtain signatures from personnel spread out all over the place. It took him more than 2 weeks of wandering around the premises before he finally completed the process. A few months later, when he obtained a full tuition scholarship to attend one of the leading institutions in the United States, he completed all formalities and registration here in Nigeria before he boarded the aircraft that took him to his new location. There was a dormitory room for him to move into as soon as he arrived there. That is something we can achieve here if we set our minds to do it. The Information and Communication Technology, or ICT network, serves functions that are far beyond direct student needs. The teachers need the network for effective instruction of the students, for handling student assignments, for plagiarism checks of submissions, for preparing student examinations and processing the results, for academic research, and for interaction with industry and the wider community. Access to electronic journals and e-books present in the institution's library system and further afield can be gained through the network. It improves efficiency throughout the system. The website of the university is its window to the world. Many scholars and entrepreneurs internationally seek information about institutions from their websites, and that is often the source of information that leads to very productive collaborations. Several aspects of financial management can be streamlined through an effective portal, minimizing bureaucratic delays in accessing funds for essential academic activities and rendering accounts promptly to ensure probity. The COVID-19 pandemic led to virtual learning becoming more widely accepted because video conferencing had become more easily accessible and affordable. All of these activities require an appropriate digital infrastructure to bridge the gap between teachers and learners and all stakeholders in the higher education enterprise. The digital infrastructure must be robust because of the circumstances we find ourselves. Power failures and voltage fluctuations are still a fact of life in our setting. These damage the expensive equipment required to set up a proper digital infrastructure. Hence, measures to protect the equipment should be an integral part of their installation. And access to data repositories must be tightly controlled to prevent data breaches. I will move on now to pedagogical infrastructure, which is probably the most important of the four. Pedagogy is primarily about interaction between the teacher and the student in the learning environment, especially where the teacher is the primary determinant of what is learned. Pedagogical infrastructure here is being used in a generic way, as it also includes what is needed for adult learning, or andragogy. And the journey of discovery that is called self-directed learning, or heutagogy, as well as what is now regarded as the most expedient approach to lifelong learning, collaborative learning, or metagogy. All of these forms of learning require a focus, a description of what is to be learnt, how it is to be learnt, and how what is learnt would be assessed, otherwise known as the curriculum. The curriculum is the most important element in the pedagogical infrastructure, but there are other complementary elements that determine the quality of the learning process and what the students have competencies for at the end of their period of learning. An appropriate curriculum will meet the needs of industry and focus on employability, including self-employment. Under this framework, students would be offered opportunities for multi-skilled development with provision for certification of specialized skills learned, what is now sometimes referred to as nano-credentialing. We move on now to intellectual property infrastructure. If the university were a factory, its main product would be new knowledge and innovation, or the use to which the new knowledge is put. Without knowledge production, the essence of a university is lost. Protecting the claim of researchers in a university to primacy in a particular discovery is a task that brings prestige to the institution and may yield financial returns too. A functional and proactive intellectual property office is an indispensable part of a contemporary research-oriented institution. It must be staffed with an appropriate mix of personnel, including those with training in the sciences, in the humanities, and the law. Why is infrastructure important for higher education? The 4 types of infrastructure described above, especially lecture halls and tutorial rooms, advanced audiovisual systems, libraries, laboratories, and digital networks, are indispensable in creating learning environments that will enable students to thrive in our university. There is strong evidence that high-quality infrastructure and amenities, among other advantages, facilitate better instruction, reduce dropout rates, and improve overall student outcomes. It also strongly influences the choice of students as to which university to enroll in. The most important impediment to excellence that African universities face is inadequate infrastructure of various kinds. And this was captured in a publication by vice chancellors of universities that are partners in the Qatar Consortium in a paper published in The Lancet in 2018. And a lot of the infrastructural deficit has to do with chronic underfunding. In the Qatar doctoral training program, doctoral fellows are permitted to enroll for their doctoral degrees in any of the original 9 partner African universities. They are actually encouraged to enroll in a university other than their own place of employment in order to encourage the cross-fertilization of ideas and sharing of best practices across the institutions. Among the 245 students enrolled in the 10 cohorts of Qatar doctoral fellows, one institution stood out amongst the others as the destination of choice for the doctoral students. That institution is the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, also known as WITS, where more than 1/3, that's about 36% of the Qatar fellows registered for their PhDs. You may not be able to see those numbers, but WITS registered 89 doctoral students. The next was Nairobi with 34 and Ibadan with 32. When I engaged with the Qatar fellows about their choices of institution and why they made the choices, one reason that many of the students gave was the better infrastructural facilities available at WITS compared to the other African partner universities. This behavior is not peculiar to students enrolled in the Qatar program. Other Nigerian students had been reported as flocking to South Africa for doctoral studies because of better societal infrastructure and research facilities. This extends to those who had already obtained their PhD and were pursuing academic careers in this university and other Nigerian higher educational institutions after their doctoral degrees. Fewer students in the latter Qatar cohorts chose WITS for doctoral degrees as reports of rolling blackouts and other infrastructural failures began to emanate from South Africa. I will now talk a bit about the infrastructural decay in Nigeria's higher educational institutions and how the Tertiary Education Trust Fund comes in. Having established the essential infrastructure that ought to be in a 21st century university, we need to do a critical examination of how our system and Nigeria's entire higher education sector has fared in this regard. The first university to be established in Nigeria was sited in Ibadan, this university, starting as a university college in special relationship with the University of London and awarding degrees of the latter. It started with 3 faculties: arts, science, and medicine. Having started instruction of students at a converted military installation at Eleyele, modern facilities were constructed on this site, 5 kilometers north of the municipal boundaries then. With the approval of the Colonial Office in London, funds were allocated by the Nigerian government to build classrooms and laboratories that were comparable to what was available in the best universities in the world. Visitation panels sent to Ibadan from the University of London in those early days did not allow standards to be compromised. A case in point is the University College Hospital, which was established for the clinical training of the students in the Faculty of Medicine. When students were admitted to the new medical school in 1948, the original intention was that they would pursue preclinical studies for 4 years and then move to the government native authority hospital at Adeoyo for clinical studies. The University of London sent a visitation panel led by Dr. TETFUND in 1951 to assess the facilities available at Adeoyo for the clinical postings of the students. The verdict of the Hunt visitation panel was unequivocal. Adeoyo Hospital could never be good enough to train students for University of London degrees. Only a new hospital built de novo would be acceptable. Since such a hospital could not be completed in the approximately 1 year before clinical studies were due to commence, there was an alternative suggestion that the buildings of the 56th Military Hospital in Eleyele be a temporary teaching hospital for the new medical school. This alternative was also outrightly rejected. Such was the commitment to having excellent infrastructure for training when what was the precursor of Nigeria's current university system was being established. Sadly, that commitment to excellence has not endured. The first universities that were created after Nigeria's independence started out in temporary sites, but 3 of those had served as campuses of the Nigerian College for Arts, Science, and Technology at Enugu, Ibadan, and Zaria, respectively. What was common to all these campuses was that the infrastructure therein compared quite favorably with those at the University College, Ibadan. This was the campus of the Nigerian College of Arts, Science, and Technology in Zaria. In those early days, this has been built around now by the campus of the Ahmadu Bello University. The same cannot be said of the universities that were established after the 1970s. And many of them never outgrew the very poor infrastructure they started with. From a single university prior to October 1960, the nation, as at March 2024, had 264 universities, 53 belonging to the federal government, 62 by different state governments, and 149 having private proprietors, ranging from faith-based entities and civil society organizations to individual entrepreneurs. Another private university was added in April 2024, making a total of 265 universities in Nigeria now. I don't know whether another has been added in May. The governmental resources available for tertiary education have to be distributed among the 115 public universities, as well as approximately 450 polytechnics, monotechnics, and colleges of education that belong to the federal and state governments. In spite of greater political stability in Nigeria over the last 25 years, funding for education remains unstable. Sometimes there will be an uptick in funding. At other times, budgetary provisions dropped precipitously. The federal and state governments have been establishing new universities at a dizzying rate, based primarily on political expediency, rather than careful feasibility studies and the ability to fund the institutions sustainably. The steady deterioration of the infrastructure and facilities at Nigeria's universities gathered pace in the late 1980s and reached a very low point by the early 1990s. Everyone was looking for a solution. In my opinion, the singular greatest achievement of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, in Nigeria, was the creation of the Education Trust Fund in 1993. This followed industrial actions by ASU in 1991 and 1992 that culminated in an agreement between ASU and the federal government on 3rd September 1992 on funding of universities. The ETF, which was a product of that agreement, later metamorphosed into the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, or TETFUND. The origin of TETFUND lies partly in the report of the Longe Commission, which was headed by Gray Longe, a former head of the Civil Service of the Federation. The report recommended that the burden of infrastructural department of Nigeria's universities be addressed by a special tax on the profits of companies above a specified threshold in terms of capitalization. Hence, the Education Tax Act No. 7 of 1993 was enacted, stipulating a 2% tax on such accessible profits. The act was amended by Act No. 40 of 1998 before it was actually implemented, and funds were disbursed as intervention funds to all levels of public education in Nigeria from 1999 up till May 2011. That's another story which I will not delve into, because TETFUND, or the ETF, was not meant for all levels of education. It was to be targeted at tertiary education. But in May 2011, the Education Tax Act was repealed and replaced with the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, with the main objective of funding and engaging in project management for the rehabilitation, restoration, and consolidation of tertiary education in Nigeria. TETFUND has been highly instrumental in addressing the infrastructural decay and deficits in Nigeria's higher educational institutions. There is no public tertiary institution in Nigeria today where buildings constructed or refurbished by TETFUND will not be found. And I wonder what the state of infrastructure in our universities would be by now if the fund had not been established. However, instead of focusing solely on infrastructure, TETFUND has again been diverted by political considerations to various other distractions. These include providing takeoff grants to new universities, funding research and publications, sponsoring academic staff training and development, and to quote what was on the TETFUND website, any other need which in the opinion of the Board of Trustees is critical and essential for the improvement and maintenance of standards in higher educational institutions. This kind of carte blanche has the unfortunate effect of reducing the effectiveness of TETFUND's interventions and diverting the attention of the agency from managing the infrastructural projects properly. The excursion into research funding and provision of scholarships for staff development is particularly worrisome. TETFUND has disbursed more than 23 billion naira on 912 research projects that were approved for funding by it. While these interventions are very important for the growth of the system, TETFUND is the wrong vehicle for such engagements. By law, TETFUND can only support public tertiary educational institutions, but there is a lot of meaningful research being undertaken in private universities that are essential for national development. The Nigerians working in those private institutions deserve as much support for their research and academic advancement as their counterparts that are in the public institutions. But TETFUND is precluded by statute from providing such support. Alternative mechanisms are needed to cover these areas of need for personnel in both public and private institutions without putting additional pressure on the funding or the management capabilities of TETFUND. Concerning research management, one key complaint of many recipients of TETFUND research grants is the poor responsiveness of the body when it comes to releasing research funds or assisting researchers to confront other challenges encountered in implementing their research projects. That is not surprising. If the same agency has to deal with so many disparate issues, that needs to change. Let's move beyond infrastructure. If the system is to function properly, there must be a superstructure upon the infrastructure, and all must function in an integrated manner. The most important element in the superstructure is the personnel who drive the processes in the system. If these people are not empowered, if these cells are not nourished, the system will not function optimally. Two key elements of the superstructure to which personnel must make a major input and from which they stand to derive tremendous benefits are a psychologically supportive environment and networking opportunities. Without these two elements, it will not matter much what infrastructure had been put in place for the institution. The superstructure must give primacy to the emotional health of the personnel working within the system. The opportunities for networking within and outside the system must also be given priority because this is the most efficient way of getting acquainted with innovations and the needs of industry and society. The third crucial element of the superstructure is an appropriate mix of personnel with different skill sets and knowledge bases required for the system to function effectively. We will now move on to creating a nurturing and supportive environment. The foundation of a supportive atmosphere in the system is leadership. An alert, responsive, and forward-looking leadership will ensure that wherever toxicity, whether for staff or for students, threatens to rear its head in the institution, it is stamped out quickly. The primary task of a leader is to improve the organizational climate. Preferably, personnel should be motivated to go the extra step and overachieve. In all these, establishing clear communication channels from the leader to the led and vice versa are vital in shaping the prevailing conditions in the workplace. In building a supportive environment, openness and transparency in all dealings within the system is essential. From admission, through teacher-student interactions, student assessment, up to graduation, as well as the conduct of research and the publication of research findings. The rules and the standards must be known to all stakeholders. The leadership must ensure that deviations are corrected quickly so that they do not become the norm. Every worker should be encouraged to develop a good work ethic. Such work ethic can only thrive in an atmosphere of sound institutional ethics, a manner of doing things in which everyone respects the rights and privileges of others while seeking the protection of their own. A strong work ethic among the staff does not necessarily translate into an environment of sound ethical behavior. This has to be cultivated through educating the workers, adopting and implementing policies that encourage good behavior while applying sanctions for unacceptable conduct. Every institution gradually develops traditions and rituals that are followed in the conduct of affairs. New entrants must be acquainted with such traditions so that everyone has a sense of belonging. Those traditions must be built on a bedrock of justice and fairness to all. We move on now to networking. Your network is your net worth. That's an aphorism from the best-selling author Tim Sanders that I find to be simultaneously pithy and profound. Everyone extols the value of the market in helping to arrive at the true worth of goods and services. What makes the market to work in your favor, however, is the quantum of information you have about what others are willing to give in exchange for what they seek. Information leads to knowledge, and like Francis Bacon famously said, knowledge is power. The information and knowledge that is needed to get the best of the marketplace is most efficiently obtained through networking. Forging networks with other higher educational institutions, with alumni, with civil society organizations, with industry, all could help create synergy for mutual development. There are so many mechanisms that universities could use to enhance networking within the system and with external entities. Examples include work study for students within the system, student placement in industries that agree to work in partnership with the university, and key players in industry supplying content for inclusion in curricula based on the changing needs in society. Successful businesses are those that can sense evolving changes in society and respond rapidly to them. So they know the knowledge and skill set that those coming to work for them ought to have. Universities should prepare their graduates to meet those needs. Partnership with industry goes beyond bringing curricula up to date. Research, knowledge generation, and innovation are the primary reasons for the existence of universities. New products and newer ways of doing things are usually the product of intense research. Knowing the products that are in high demand and alterations to existing products to make them more appealing are what marketing units and the research and development divisions of great corporations excel in. Industry and academia partnerships have existed for quite a long time to the mutual benefit of both. In some instances, industry giants establish facilities within the campus where students can interact with engineers and managers that are working for those companies to develop new products and better marketing techniques. I've seen this in a number of campuses in other countries. More recently, researchers are actually taking the initiative to commercialize the new knowledge that their research has created. And savvy institutions have invested in incubator enterprises on university campuses to get fledgling innovative products established in the market. This has become a major source of revenue for the universities that have established such links in other climes. One more way by which universities can deploy networking to their advantage is for faculty to engage in consultancies in their areas of knowledge and skills. The expertise which abounds in universities such as ours can be made directly available to the community without having to go through intermediaries. I will dwell more on the importance of an appropriate personnel mix for our system. As mentioned earlier, the personnel are the most critical part of the superstructure. A higher educational system that will function optimally must have the different categories of personnel that complement each other and make the system run smoothly. In Nigeria's current university system, one of the weaknesses is a suboptimal personnel mix. Generally, the two main categories of staff are the academic or teaching staff and the non-teaching staff, as the administrative the technical and support staff. These two groups are expected to work together in collaboration to fulfill basic university functions, especially teaching and research. It had been recommended in 2002 by the National Universities Commission that the ratio of academic to non-teaching staff should be about 1:3. And if there was to be a deviation, it should be in the direction of engaging more academic staff. There has, however, been an overwhelming preponderance of non-teaching staff in publicly funded universities, while the opposite has been the case in private universities. In many instances, the job descriptions of personnel were not clearly stated, and a lot of overlap existed. The consequence was an overloaded bureaucracy with an enormous wage bill in most federal and state-owned universities, which reduces the quantum of funds available for core academic activities, especially funding for research. In private universities, academic staff had to take on many of the administrative and support functions that ought to have been borne by non-teaching staff, increasing the chances of burnout. Neither situation is conducive to optimal knowledge production and dissemination. Another key issue is getting the best qualified graduates to take up academic and non-teaching positions in Nigerian universities. A professor at the top of the salary scale in a Nigerian federal university received emoluments that went from about $40,000 per annum in 2009 to about $4,000 per annum in 2023. In real terms, a university professor of many years standing now earns just about 10% of what he or she earned in 2009 when calculated in US dollars. And I'm one of those in that category. This is not the kind of situation that would attract the brightest and the best to academia, since better opportunities beckon elsewhere. That has meant that the best graduates from the various disciplines in Nigeria's universities in the last 3 decades have sought careers anywhere but in the universities. The oil and gas, communication, banking, and manufacturing sectors had been their destinations of choice. Although lately, the Japa syndrome has taken hold, and most are headed offshore to seek self-actualization in other lands. The other major consequence of the low wages is that international academic talent cannot be attracted to such an environment, which is why almost all of Nigeria's universities have abysmal internationalization scores on various ranking platforms. I will go on now to talk about how setting up new programs can nourish, or what are the impediments to setting up new programs that are meant to nourish. To keep the cells in the system well nourished, new programs and new ways of doing things are necessary. A system that makes it difficult for cells to receive the nourishment required for effective function would fail sooner or later. I wish to elaborate a bit on the experiences garnered in the course of establishing a new program that was designed to make academic staff more effective in their teaching role in this and other universities. As mentioned in the first part of this trilogy, a collaborative effort led to the receipt of a grant from the European Union through its African, Caribbean, and Pacific European Union Cooperation Program in Higher Education, otherwise known as EduLink, to establish a training program in academic skills for new teachers of the health professions. The lessons we learned in establishing that program are threefold. First of all, the fact that a particular program will bring great benefits to a system and other similar systems does not guarantee support from critical stakeholders in that system. The desire for personal benefit or a perceived threat to established spheres of influence can provoke unyielding opposition. Secondly, old habits die hard. The administrative personnel of the postgraduate school were used to a particular way of doing things based on the campus-based students they had been dealing with, and were unwilling to change even after being trained in new methods. The enthusiasm of the academic heads of the postgraduate school was what eventually made some measure of success possible. Thirdly, overcoming the initial resistance is winning one battle, but the war can continue over a long period of time, with many more battles needing to be fought and won before a program becomes firmly established. The system needs to find a way to ensure that nourishment is not denied to cells because of parasitic elements or from dead cells that have managed to remain within different organs of the system. I will go on now to talk about building capacity for the system, which is the essence of nourishment. Nourishing the cells is to make them perform optimally. In other words, it means building their capacity to perform. There must be intentionality about this if the system is to function as intended. The main building blocks of knowledge-generating universities are the early career researchers, beginning with doctoral students and postdoctoral fellows before we get to the tenured academics, particularly those who are yet to attain the professorial grade. I mentioned it in the first part of this discourse, but I need to come back again to address the impact that the Consortium for Advanced Research Training in Africa, CATA, has had on this university and Africa as a whole. The whole concept of CATA was to build capacity for research in the partner institutions, and ultimately to ensure that research that directly addresses Africa's needs is planned and executed on the continent. The success of CATA thus far has been built on institutional, not individual partnerships, and a willingness on the part of several different donor agencies to support the vision. I'm showing up there the different donors that I've given to CATA over the years. The seed fund to commence the discussions came from the African Population and Health Research Center, which has served as the secretariat of the consortium right from inception. The first major external source of funding was the Wellcome Trust, and the organization remains a major source of support, now channeling that support through the Science for Africa Foundation. Funding came thereafter from many agencies, partly because of the flexibility built into the partnership, and partly because of the quality of work being done by CATA. Most funding agencies have their preferred geographical or thematic area of intervention. The partners coming from disparate parts of Africa and the broad theme of population and public health adopted by CATA accommodated the desired areas of intervention of several different agencies. Hence, the consortium was able to tap many sources, sometimes through one single partner or a subset of partners. For instance, the funding that came from MacArthur Foundation and the British Council were channeled through the University of Ibadan. A lot of the funding from the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, or NORAD, came through a trio of East and Southern African partner universities in Uganda, Rwanda, and Malawi. What made the difference was that the funds were utilized in ways that, whilst they conformed to donor requirements, managed to spread the benefits throughout the consortium. It is a model I will commend to similar groupings that are formed to address other forms of transdisciplinary research in Africa and globally. The impact of Qatar on UI has been profound. I touched upon some of the contributions made to the research infrastructure of the institution during the last part of this trilogy. I wish to elaborate a bit more on how the consortium has contributed to the nourishment of cells in different organs of our system. The goal of Qatar can be summed up as being to build a critical mass of African research leaders working in research supportive and responsive African institutions, leading to a situation where African public universities are centers of research excellence that meet societal needs. When it comes to building the capacity of personnel, Qatar has pursued 3 main tracks. The first 2 tracks have been part of Qatar activities since inception. The first track focused on doctoral students pursuing PhDs, while the second part was directed at cadres of university staff responsible for research training and the conduct of research within the universities. The third track has been centered on recent doctoral graduates trying to establish themselves in research careers. As part of the competitive selection process, applicants were required to complete a set of literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking tests. They were also required to complete online research ethics and plagiarism courses. Those who were able to scale this hurdle were ranked, and the best were awarded fellowships. Those who were admitted into the cohort then proceeded to Joint Advanced Seminar 1, which was an introduction to research methods, critical thinking, and interdisciplinary research literacy. Thereafter, they pursued a specialized academic writing course alongside preparing the proposals for their research. 8 months later, they attend the Joint Advanced Seminar 2 with their proposals completed so that they could be trained on data acquisition, management, and analysis before they began their data collection for their projects. 22 months later, after meeting specific milestones along the way, they were invited to JAS 3 to explore the interpretation and dissemination of the information they had gathered. Thereafter, they would submit their dissertation or thesis. Afterward, or in the process of doing that, they were expected to attend the final JAS for professional development and preparation for life in academia. The pathway through these JASs became the hallmark of Qatar doctoral training, and the curricula of these seminars have been codified, digitized, and made available for use by any institution that desires to do so. They are freely available on the Qatar website. An aggregate of 36 fellows have been accepted from UI, the largest of any of the partner universities. 32 of them, more than 90%, are still on the staff of this university. 2 have emigrated. 1 is in another Nigerian university, but I'm hoping that we will get her back. And 1, sadly, is deceased. 29, or about 80% of the fellows have graduated. According to the data on the Qatar Evidence website, the Qatar alumni and fellows from UI have, since the commencement of their fellowships, published in reputable journals an aggregate of more than 700 scholarly articles that have been cited more than 7,000 times. Three of them are full professors, and many more are waiting in the wings. In terms of scientific output, Qatar fellows from UI have been exceptional. They have been responsible for more than 1/3 of all the scientific publications from the 8 current African partner universities. One remarkable attribute of the Carter Fellows is that all were part-time students holding faculty or professional positions in the university. Yet, 20 of the 29 that have graduated, that's about 70%, completed their doctorate degrees within 60 months. The overall median completion time was 54 months. In a survey of the general doctoral student population, that's full-time and part-time in this university, that was conducted recently, only 12% completed their programs in 60 months. And the median time to completion was 84 months. More than 40% took more than 100 months to completion. This tardiness in completing doctoral training programs is wasteful and can be frustrating for many of the students and their well-meaning supervisors. Only about a third of the students managed to do their pre-field seminar presentation within 24 months of admission into the program. Lateness in commencing data collection set the stage for delays in the other stages. And we are going to come back to this issue because it is already been addressed by our postgraduate college. The second track of personnel intervention started at about the same time as the recruitment of the first cohort of Carter Fellows. And this was in the form of a series of workshops to train early career academics, administrative staff involved in the admission and support for postgraduate students, different cadres of professional staff that were essential for supporting research activities in the universities, including librarians, ICT specialists, public communication officers, professional research administrators, and finance specialists from the bursary. The first set of workshops were made possible by a grant made to the University of Ibadan by the British Council through its development partnerships in higher education, or Delphi Intervention Project. Other sources of funding came on stream later to ensure the sustenance of the intervention. The workshops were initially called Faculty, Administrator, and Staff, or FAST workshops. The first one was held in Nairobi in 2011. We've had more than 10 such workshops across the different partner institutions since then. The curriculum has been revised substantially, and we have a new nomenclature for it, which was applied in 2020. That's Academic, Professional, and Administrative Staff, APAS workshop. In addition to the workshops that brought the partners together, UI organized additional workshops specifically for staff within UI. 6 of such workshops have been held, including 2 in 2023. One key addition to the local workshops held in Ibadan has been the inclusion of laboratory technologists who were not invited to the Carter International workshops because of the population and public health orientation of Carter. Through these workshops, more than 400 staff of various cadres in UI have been trained on essential skills to support the research enterprise in UI. One other laudable output from one of the consortium-wide workshops was the creation of the Consortium of Carter Libraries, or CCL for short, to share materials across the library systems of the partner universities so that researchers could gain access to scientific publications wherever they are available within the system. The third personnel nourishing intervention from Carter has been the activities arranged to support Carter alumni and other early career researchers. This took the form of graduate workshops, which we have now renamed Graduate Grant Writing Workshop, or GGWW. Sponsorship of postdoctoral fellowships in top-notch universities globally, and the award of re-entry grants to support specific research projects led by the Carter alumni. Nearly all the Carter alumni from UI have had the opportunity of participating in these graduate workshops. And they were encouraged to submit funding for their proposals to be supported. 16 of the alumni, 8 male and 8 female, were successful in winning either a postdoctoral fellowship, 7 awards, or re-entry grants, 9 awards, with an aggregate total of nearly $900,000. Such funding has enabled the Carter alumni to flourish, publish, and enhance the function of the system. The main strategy of Carter in this second decade of its existence is to ensure the sustenance of the gains that have been made in building research capacity in the partner institutions and through institutionalization of best practices. Upscaling of efforts and expansion of access to Carter's digitized content, especially the curricula. One initiative is to expose all doctoral students in this university to key elements of the core training that Carter has developed over the years in the Joint Advanced Seminars, especially critical thinking, metacognition, and problem-solving skills. To institutionalize the Carter best practices for doctoral training, a curriculum development workshop was held in June 2019 under the auspices of the Postgraduate College and Carter. The cohort concept of Carter was adapted to meet the need of a much larger population of trainees. The various faculties and institutes offering doctoral degrees in the university were placed in 6 disciplinary groups. I'm not sure whether that is visible or not, but those groups are agricultural sciences, education, medical sciences, humanities, science and technology, and social and management sciences. So we've had these various clusters, as we call them, draw up curricula that was specific to the needs of their own cluster. The curricula developed at the workshop formed the basis of what has been named the UI Doctoral Academy, which is based at the university's postgraduate college. Since the curricula are still awaiting Senate approval, they are not yet formal courses in the university, but the contents are being used for the workshops that are being test run amongst all first-year doctoral students in UI. The inaugural workshop was held in this Trenchard hall and was declared open by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kayode Adebowale, on 19th February 2024. Another workshop was held for the second batch from 22nd to 25th April 2024. We are going to be doing a final workshop that will capture all the remainder of the first-year doctoral students in UI in June 2024. The entire cohort will attend workshops in batches in their second and third years to cover the other contents of the Carter digitized curriculum as adapted through our own internal curriculum development workshop. And the essence is that students should not wait 10 years to get their PhD from UI. This set, we are hoping, and I believe, that 2/3 of them will graduate within 60 months. From the foregoing, the nourishing provided to cells in UI through just one capacity building program is apparent. Other capacity building programs are going on in other organs within the system. And if a way can be found to leave no organ behind, then the system will function in a truly optimal manner for the benefit of all. I'll move quickly on now to the next segment of my talk, which is bringing people, facilities, and processes together. With good infrastructure, a well-nourished superstructure, the system is ready to go. But appropriate means must be devised to bring the people, facilities, and processes together to achieve the desired outcome. For the system to get the best out of people, the facilities must be a good fit, and the processes must be carefully thought out to align properly with institutional goals. The difference between an excellent and a mediocre institution is found in how the leaders can guide the process of alignment and motivate the personnel to achieve. Two key elements that must command the attention of institutional leaders when designing the processes that will elevate the system are carefully setting out standard operating procedures and specifying mechanisms for effective supervision. This system approach factors in the socio-ecological complexity of the organization. In chapter 18, verse 20 of the book of Matthew in the Holy Bible, when 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name, God is there. When the gathering is not in God's name, what is there is politics. The politics of human systems can, however, be organized in a way that becomes beneficial rather than deleterious. Some leaders opt for policies and interventions that may promise quick fixes to complex problems, but this is often misplaced. That old idiom, the longest way round is the shortest way home, still holds. In the final part of the lecture, I shall let my professional calling come to the fore as I do what doctors do routinely in our clinics: hand out prescriptions. We need them to build a vibrant academy. Thank you for your attention.